Lifting up our hearts to heaven, let us imitate the hierarchy of the angels.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory be to Jesus Christ.
Glory be forever.
So, we're going to finish today with the sermons about the Beatitudes that we've been having for the past couple of weeks. And we want to bring a few final things to everyone's attention. As we heard it being sung, the way that we pronounce that first word in all of those parts of the Beatitudes is blessed. Blessed are those. But if you look at it, if you were just to read that word out of context, you might think of it as being pronounced blessed. It's just a small difference. If we say something is blessed or someone is blessed, they're a holy person. But if we say blessed, we specifically mean that someone has received a blessing from God. And what if we were to take the entirety of our look at the Beatitudes and instead of saying, blessed are those, holy or righteous are those who do these things, what if instead we thought of it as, blessed are those? That those who do these things, those who act in this way that Christ has directed us, are instead specifically blessed by God. And it's an interesting way of looking at this if we remember that Christ gave us this to give us some new way of understanding acting out his life and his commandments. That instead of being holy by doing it, we become holy people as he blesses us for doing it. That it's a slow transition, that we begin to do these things and thus receive God's grace in return. And I wanted to sort of follow up with that idea that by doing these things, we obtain God's grace. Because if we look at where, and if you have a Bible around you, you can follow along. If we look at where the Beatitudes are found, they are found first in Matthew chapter 5, and we call this the Sermon on the Mount. And it begins with the Beatitudes, these announcements. But the Sermon on the Mount is not just sort of summed up in only the Beatitudes. It goes on for quite a while. And this is sort of the introduction to more things that we're meant to learn, more ways that we're meant to understand living our life. And if I can offer to you, in the Orthodox Study Bible, there are nice excerpts that are put in, nice sort of studies that they put in with all the rest of the Scripture. And there's specifically one about this Sermon on the Mount. And I'll begin by quoting that the Beatitudes, which go from verse 1 through 16, the sermon begins with the Beatitudes, or the blessings, which describes the joys of true discipleship, the blessed way of life. The people of God await the rewards of the promises that Jesus makes. And this is what we've been talking about. That these are what we receive for the true discipleship that he's labeling. That if we've missed the mark of discipleship so far from the commandments or from the rest of the law, we now receive them here. And we understand the exact reward that we will get. The commandments didn't really give us a reward. It was just do these things because I am God and we love God. And this is our way of being a part of God, of living righteously. But now we are specifically told what rewards we will get back. But I want to continue on that the idea in the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes are there to sort of ease us into the rest because they can be rather heavy. Christ is not just replacing the Ten Commandments by giving us the Beatitudes, he's adjusting our way of speaking, or our way of, adjusting our way of thinking. He's fixing the way that we think about living our lives. Because he begins by sort of tearing down the idea of murder. If you murder somebody, we already know that that's wrong, that you shouldn't do that. But now, it's not so much that you can't murder people, but if you're angry with them in your heart, and you are holding on to that, you've already murdered them. They might not be dead, you didn't enact it out, but you already committed that sin. I think she believes me, so thank you. And then he goes so far as to also say, it's not just adultery anymore. Yes, it's still wrong to commit adultery, but if we go one step further, it is a blatant sin to just dwell on lust. He's adjusting our way of thinking that, yeah, we can stick to the bottom line of the law, but if we are still just sinful people in our hearts, we might not be doing bad things, but if we're letting sort of temptations and passions run rampant in us, then we're no better than people who aren't doing those things anyway. Because understand it's this idea that we're being called to something higher. That Christ eases us in with letting us know what our reward will be for true discipleship. But then challenging that discipleship by giving us something higher to aim for. If somebody were to give you a goal, and then to really lowball it and tell you that it didn't really matter all that much, you're not going to be motivated to do it. If you feel that it's something below your skill set, why is that a challenge for you? And why do you want to try anyway? It's why Christ has raised the bar. That he's given us this next step. That it's not just so much don't commit the sins, but try to purge them from your heart first. You have already done well to act in the way that I want. Now think, now feel, now evaluate yourself in the way that helps you grow spiritually. Our bar has been raised, and we are hoped upon by God and by our fellow man that we will attain to. And we know from the beginning, in these Beatitudes that we've been studying, that we've been hearing, that reward will wait for us upon doing these things. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory be to Jesus Christ.
Glory be forever.